Well, as our sign is saying there, it's our 5th year interviews. Of course, it's 4 years served. And thank you, Mr. Shimmins. You're the first one in for the interview. But we've done these every year. It's nothing big and exciting for most people anyway. But it gives us a chance to look back and also look forward. So should we do that back first? How's your last year been? What's been standing out for you?
Well, it's been an incredibly challenging year, not just for me, but for really everyone on the island as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. So I think that if anyone who looks back on this year, I would suggest that has been a major issue. And clearly, as a Treasury member, I've been very actively involved in how we have looked to support people and businesses throughout this crisis. And also, a lot of my constituents have been contacting me over the last year. Probably seen a big increase in the number of constituent inquiries I've had as a result of the crisis.
Okay, well, you got this in a thing, you know, as you say, in Treasury. How worried were you? How worried are you?
Well, I think we were all very concerned. I mean, I think we now know a lot more. We're still finding out more about both the medical nature of the crisis, but also the economic impact that's had. So that's certainly been a major concern. We have taken, I believe, quick and decisive actions in terms of the support packages that we put in place. Which were put in place incredibly quickly. You know, we got together as a team, and there was a large team of people involved, and we recognised that we had to get support out, and we had to do it in an effective manner. So, by and large, not everything has gone 100% as anticipated, sure. But by and large, I think actually our response has been pretty effective.
Do you think the government did okay? I mean, we'll come to the overall score at the end, but I mean, on this particular thing.
I think it's always difficult to generalise.
And we're still in the middle of it.
Yeah, we're still in the middle of it, and so it's not over. And I think there's a danger of complacency that people think everything's sorted now. That's not the case. I would say that government upped its game generally. So I saw more teamwork across different government departments, which can be siloed. And I also saw people operating at speed. So there was an injection of pace. And I think part of the opportunity for us now, as we look to the future, is to retain that nimbleness, that teamwork, and that pace. Because those are not adjectives which you would really have used to describe government, I think, in the past. And if you look at some of the other things which haven't gone so well, you would say, come on, get a grip on these things. So I think, yes, I think a number of people upped their game, and I think the government as a whole upped its game collectively, which is really what needs to happen in any crisis.
Well, let's park this because it's such a big subject. Sure. Well, I mean, in the normal sort of day-to-day over the last 12 months, highlights for you, things you've done, things you've supported or disagree with even?
I think it's difficult to pull out individual highlights, would be my view. Certainly very, very proud of the way we responded to the COVID crisis in terms of the economic support packages that we put in place. Also pleased to see increasing awareness of the need to look at our town centres in terms of regeneration. So I think that debate has been moved on positively. A lot of people are now talking about brownfield sites as opposed to concreting over the Manx countryside.
This is what you're very keen on, were you?
Well, I think if you look at outside in Douglas, we could quite easily go for a walk within 5 minutes, and we'd find a number of large sites which have lain vacant for decades, and it makes sense that we redevelop those sites ahead of the green fields in the Manx countryside. So that is going to be up for debate in October. So Ray Harmer, the Minister for Policy and Reform, has advised that he will be bringing the latest version of the Eastern Area Plan to Tynwald in October, and that's something which I am very interested in, because I think it's really important that we learn the lessons from the past and we look to develop the island in a more sustainable and more intelligent way. And if we do that by focusing on the brownfield sites, we'll also bring the life back to our towns. So there's lots and lots of advantages. So
you're in favour of lower speed limits in certain areas, aren't you?
Particularly urban urban areas. So if you look at a lot of the evidence, shows that if you're a pedestrian and you're hit by a car at 30 miles an hour, 50% of those pedestrians unfortunately will die. Whereas if you're hit by a car at 20 miles an hour, 90% will survive. So it's really stark, and so the World Health Organization has issued guidance suggesting that all urban roads where vulnerable road users mix, which they really should have a 20 miles an hour speed limit, and that's been rolled out really across Europe. So that's something
it's rolled out around here. I mean, the speed limits have come in over the last 5 years, or 4 years so far.
There are some, particularly in housing estates, but still, it's the most common concern that I get contacted about pretty much every week. I get constituents talking to me about concerns about speeding outside their homes, and it means that their children can't walk to school or they can't play out. If they're elderly people, potentially they can't get out to do their shopping. So it really impacts on people's lives, particularly it would seem in Middle, but I know it's a real concern for a number of Douglas MHKs as well, and I know that a number of petitions actually underway at the moment in Douglas seeking 20 mile an hour zones for these neighbourhoods, because these are neighbourhoods where people live, and we seem to have lost sight of that. I'm not saying that every road in Douglas should be 20 miles an hour. Perhaps the main roads with other.
It's got nothing to do with your cycling hat on, though, because you're very keen on the cycle side of things as well.
Well, I think it's clearly I'm a cyclist, but I'm also a motorist. Well, that's great, and I'm also a pedestrian. Yeah. So I would suggest actually it's wrong to label people, and this debate can become quite tribal, which is actually really unhelpful. We should all be focused on road safety. Because road safety actually impacts everyone in our community.
Well, to wrap this one up, just we had the speed limit brought down during the lockdown, all that sort of thing, and therefore now it's certainly going to be up for debate, and the Chief Minister has made that clear that it will. Yeah. Where do you stand on a national speed limit?
So I'm particularly focused on urban areas where people live. In terms of that national speed limit, I can see both sides of the argument. Actually, if you look at the mountain road, very few people live on the mountain road, so I'm probably less concerned about that aspect than actually where people live.
Okay, so one for the restricted on the mountain, but a 60?
I'm not sure about it. Certainly, the mountain road, there's alternative routes to around the island. We can avoid the mountain road. There's nobody living there. What I'm really focused on is where people live, because speeding is really harming how people live. If you look at the incredible statistics from St Mark's, when over 1,200 people sped through St Mark's at over 50 miles an hour, which is a 30 mile an hour village where people live, you can see the impact it's having on people's lives.
Humps to go in, there's all sorts of manners and means, and they've tried all those, haven't they? To some degree, other places?
There's a number of different solutions. I think, first of all, we need to understand that this really does impact on people's lives. And do we really want that? Do we want children not to be able to walk to school? Okay.
I don't get bogged down in this one thing anyway, but that's something you're going to keep going with anyway.
I think road safety should be a concern for all of us.
Okay, so still looking back over this last period, the 4 years now, not just one, but what you've done, one coming up. Give us other things that you've done well, or it's in your mind that was a good decision or bad, whatever. Just trying to get in there to see what.
Okay. Yeah. So I think broadly, I'm very pleased about how we have moved forward in Treasury on a number of areas. So if I look at child benefit, for example, child benefit had not increased for 7 years up until this last regime. Every year child benefit has increased, and so I think what I've been arguing is for more of a focus, particularly to provide opportunities for our young people. Both economically, educationally, and in other areas. So I'm pleased that you're seeing some of that tangible progress. I'd like to see more. Clearly, I'm frustrated that some things which I was very keen on have not progressed. But
like examples?
Well, if I look at potentially some of the commitments I was looking at in terms of the public sector pension deficit, so I suggested that we would close that to new entrants. The view of Tim Mould as a whole was against that, so I lost that vote. So that's frustrating, but I'm not.
You've lost a few votes in your time. I mean, is that frustrating? The things you've come up with, especially that you've been championing. if you don't get them through, or maybe you have got some.
Well, clearly it's frustrating, but I think in all of these situations, at least you're moving the debate forward. At least you're actually. Often I'm proposing change, and Tynwald as a whole tends to resist change. So I think we have to accept that. But I do believe that change is an evolutionary process. So I think what you will see over time is that change happening progressively, and often that's what I've been asking for.